Hello, welcome to Bears Boldly Go, our final episode of this leg of a journey. Boldly going where no one has gone before. Well, no bear has gone before.
Yep.
Today,
Cool.
we are looking at Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. And then
As
we will
well,
have the usual
oh,
disco corner, yeah.
sorry, you just put a big pause in there, so I thought that
I pause a
I
lot.
didn't know you. Yeah, so do I. Yeah, and
Bears
as
have
you may have
pause.
noticed, bears do have pause. So yeah, we take deep breaths between in the middle of sentences, very much like Captain Kirk.
He does.
Yes. In this, the final proper Kirk film. Obviously, he's in Generations, but we're not covering that the TNG films yet. We will do at some point next year. And of course, as the sparkly lights and the loud jumpers and silly hats may show, this is our Christmas Day episode as well. So, for those of you joining us today, thank you very much. I doubt there'll be many of you. But if you are, wonderful. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Christmas themed film. It's not even one of those films that you can pretend is a Christmas film. It is a film that loves Shakespeare, though.
It is a film about Shakespeare, and therefore, to me, it feels a little bit oldie, a little bit like there is a nostalgia to it. Of course, part of it's on a snowy ice planet as well, so it does make you think of Christmas a little bit.
But it's snow.
I think, actually, the first time I ever saw it was at Christmas on TV, because I didn't see this film at the cinema. So for me, actually, it does have a certain Christmassy feel.
So this film,
yes.
Spoilers again for anyone who has not seen this 20-year-old film.
Yeah.
30 years old?
30-year-old film. Nearly 30. It was December 1991.
Oh, so it is a Christmas film. No, it's 1990 it came out.
I thought it was 91. Either way, doesn't really matter. Let's have a look. Yeah, go on then.
Oh yeah, you're right. 91.
Yeah, 91. So it is a Christmas film. Came out in December 91. It's the return of Nicholas Meyer as the director.
Yes, the director of Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, the film that we've already established is the best of the Star Trek film franchise.
Yes.
I mean, there could be another film that matches it, but Wrath of Khan is definitely going to be at least joint best.
So this film it follows on the theme that a lot of these films have had of what happens to old soldiers in peace.
Mm-hmm.
That has been the recurring theme throughout the TOS films, and this definitely feels like the final statement on that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think as we discussed last week with Final Frontier, there are ideas that are teased in the Final Frontier that I think should have been the main focus of Final Frontier, but weren't. More political ideas, more about unification, about peace between the Federation, the Klingons, and obviously in Final Frontier, the Romulans as well. The Romulans don't really play a part in this film. And I did get the feeling when I had my rewatch that this was an answer to what was lacking in Star Trek V.
For anyone at home who doesn't know what this film is about, a Klingon moon blows up and the Klingon Empire is in trouble. So Spock gets sent to discuss possibilities of peace between the Federation and the Klingons. And those peace talks are advancing well. And Kirk gets tasked with escorting the Klingon Chancellor into to a place for the peace talks to happen. There are parties on both sides that don't want peace, and Kirk and Bones get framed for the murder of the Chancellor.
Yeah.
It's an odder film than I first remembered.
Mm.
And it's a film that second two acts don't live up to how brilliant the first act is.
I get you.
And we've spoken a few times about how Shatner gets a bit of a bad rap, especially with the nuance he brings to Kirk through these films. And there's a moment at the start when he's delivering his captain's log about how he feels about peace with the Klingons.
Mm.
And he talks about how he can never trust them because they killed his son. But there's a self-awareness to him.
Mm.
He knows he's wrong. Like there's a line he says at the end, like how can there be peace? I'm paraphrasing slightly because I can't remember the exact line, but it's along the lines of, how can we have a peaceful future when people like me are its worst enemy?
Yeah.
When people like me stand in the way of it. He's aware that his stubbornness over peace is wrong. He just can't help himself.
Yeah.
Even going back to, and it's probably that self-awareness that carries him forward, right? It's the self-awareness that he's the problem that allows him to evolve. While there's other people in this film that don't.
Yeah.
And he's great.
Oh, yeah.
For as much as he tried to turn himself, Final Frontier, into the William Shatner show, Kirk doesn't have a lot of nuance in that film. Under direction of someone other than himself again.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful Kirk performance.
But then he probably had the time and the energy to focus on the performance as opposed to focusing on getting everything else correct.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, it always amazes me when actors take on the role of directing and pull it off. Like even when they're not acting in the film, because it's such a massively different task and like different job to do. But then when you challenge yourself with being a director and an actor at the same time in the same film, I mean, quite often, as with Search for Spock, where Leonard Nimoy had co-written a film where he could stand back and not have to be Spock for the vast majority of that film. So he could get away with being a director for at least 90% of what ended up on film. And then very little time, respectively, actually having to worry about his performance as Spock.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously Shatner went the other way and did make the William Shatner film about William Shatner, directed by William Shatner. And and it obviously, like, no matter whether it was an ego issue or something like that, I mean, that is a hefty task to take on that very, very few manage to do. I mean, obviously Clint Eastwood's very famous in directing himself and pulling it off. Although he has a particular style, which isn't for everyone. Ben Affleck, very surprising. Obviously, before Ben Affleck started directing, other than Good Will Hunting, obviously, he very famously known for not being a great actor.
Ben Affleck is one of like 2 or 3 directors who can really get the best out of Ben Affleck.
Yeah. There's him, there's Kevin Smith, and there's probably someone, but like
Whoever directed Good Will Hunting.
he did.
Ben Affleck didn't direct Good Will Hunting.
No, he did. No, he didn't. Did he? He wrote Good Will Hunting,
Yeah.
and what's his with Matt Damon. Who directed it?
We're off on a massive tangent here, but
we are, but I mean it's a relevant point. So Good Will Hunting.
Gus Van Sant.
That would yes. Gus Van Sant. So I mean I think, to be fair to Shatner, he gave himself an incredible task in Final Frontier. And as we said last week, there are many elements of that film that actually are really quite good. They just don't necessarily all gel together to make to make a good film. And I think that's where obviously having the return of Maya for this film and was the right choice, especially to see them off to fulfill the promise, really, of what Final Frontier could have been in this film. How did you find it overall?
Why I said earlier, I don't think it lives up to the promise of its first act, which is truly fantastic. I think that first act might be some of the best of these original series films. It's still the second best. It's not again, Voyage Home remains my personal favourite.
The favourite, yeah.
But this is still clearly the second best TOS film.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I think
I like that while we've been dealing with the idea of an old Enterprise crew throughout all of them, or at least an aging Enterprise crew, I like the idea that here it's an old Enterprise crew.
Yeah, because this is set 6 years after the events of Final Frontier. I think it was only released 2, maybe 3 years after. So in our timeline,
another 5-year voyage.
I don't think they had a 5-year voyage. I think it was at this point it's a training ship, and they're doing diplomatic work when they need to and what have you. Essentially, at this point, I think the Enterprise is retired.
They're 3 months. I mean, they're 3 months away from retirement themselves.
Oh yeah, I know, but I mean, I think it's like it's almost give them a ship and let's let them just get on with stuff, because otherwise they're just going to cause too much havoc.
I like it. I like the tension between Kirk and Spock, because Spock has more faith in Kirk than himself.
Well, I mean, at this point, Spock has most certainly been off the Enterprise for quite some time as well, because he is now Ambassador Spock.
He's still Captain Spock.
He's a captain, but he's already started being a negotiator and
I thought it was implied
he's more of a politician.
That this was potentially his first crack at that.
But I think he'd been off the ship for quite a while.
Yeah.
It did seem like they hadn't seen each other in quite some time.
I'm not sure, because the crew seemed to be confused as to where he was, which would imply they would expect him there with them. Maybe,
yeah.
Sulu is off the ship. He is a captain. After the ship has been teased for
the Excelsior,
yeah, for most of this series, we finally get to see the Excelsior in action.
I mean, and the suitable captain for it.
Yes.
The great pilot. Although obviously in the TV series wasn't a pilot. He was a botanist. He was the ship's botanist.
Well, as all great, he piloted it a lot as well.
He did pilot it a lot, but his speciality was actually botany.
It feels like everyone pilots in Star Trek, regardless of their actual job.
But then at the time, it was still more of a military ship than it was an exploratory science ship, like realistically. So it's forgivable. But yeah, I mean, suitable choice. It also meant that they could keep Sulu actor George Takei and Shatner apart, because I think it was this film that Takai had said, "I'm not coming back because I'm not playing second fiddle again," or something along those lines. And so I think it was actually part of the contractual agreements that Sulu became captain of the Excelsior. Yeah, from what I remember, I could be completely wrong. This might be a Mandela effect thing, but like, yeah, as far as I can remember, it was something along those lines. But it works. I mean, I think the fact that you have a crew that is on its last legs in some certain, they are about to retire. Spock is off doing his own thing. Sulu is off doing his own thing. It's quite nice because in my TNG rewatch, I've timed it somehow quite nicely that in the last week, I've watched the Unification episodes, which are about Spock, which came out, I think, a few months after this. And then the following, yeah, and then the following season, you've got the Scotty episode, which is called Relic, which is very much following on from the theme of these films of what do soldiers or what do old men do in times of peace, or when things change.
Speaking of TNG, this film serves in many ways as a prequel to the status quo of the Next Generation.
Yes, it certainly does.
In regards to, obviously, by the time we get to the Next Generation, there's so much. The peace is so strong between the Klingons and that there is a Klingon Starfleet officer.
Yep.
You have, and even little things like the way, at some point in the last 6 years, it looks like the Enterprise has been refit again slightly.
I think it's just been finished because it was such a bag of bolts.
Yeah. It's definitely a different internal design to the previous films. And we see something we've not seen on the Enterprise that we do see a lot in TNG, a ready room.
Yes, we do.
It's where Scotty finds the costumes of the killers.
Yeah. Which potentially could have been a shared bit of set.
I'm inclined to say it is a shared bit of set, but dressed with different...
And obviously good lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Again, I've got a feeling I remember it being shared set with... but I mean, it makes sense. Why bother?
There's a lot of TNG there to the ship in this. And we get another protege Vulcan on board.
Yep, we do.
We get a fair few of them throughout this.
Well, no, we only get two.
Two, yes.
Three, including the science officer that dies in motion picture, I suppose.
Yes, although she's not.
No, there's a male one that dies.
Oh yes, yeah, you're right.
But there's because that's why Decker becomes science officer,
played by Kim Cattrall here.
Yes, it is Kim Cattrall in this one. Yeah. And yes, yeah.
But we'll come back to that in a second because before we move on to the murder mystery subplot, which I actually have some thoughts on.
While we're still talking about Kim Cattrall, though, again, a really probably understated and underappreciated fantastic performance.
Yeah,
because it's not the biggest of characters, but it's done exactly as it needs to be done. But yes, go on.
So before we move on to the murder mystery, the dinner.
Yes.
Kirk invites the Klingons on board the Enterprise for lunch. It goes about as well as can be expected.
They
drink
senior...
the famous illegal Romulan ale.
Yeah.
Despite being illegal, everyone seems to have quite easy access to.
Yeah, especially as like there's very little communication with the Romulans. Like, they're saying that obviously Final Frontier establishes that there was communication with the Romulans. So maybe it was as simple as it started with a trade agreement. It might have been illegal, but then that could have been an allegory to things like Cuban cigars, because of course this is the whole of this is a Cold War metaphor. So maybe Romulan ale was Cuban cigars. And of course this is, as you mentioned before, Kirk talking about how can there be peace when there are people like me. This was released in 1991. This was like just a year and a half after the fall of the Iron Curtain, and the dissolving of the USSR, and Russia now being Russia again rather than the Soviet Union. How can there be peace between them? And obviously,
and worth noting again that Spock has more faith in Kirk evolving past this than Kirk has. That's why he picked Kirk, right? Because he has faith in his friend. Kirk gets quite mad at Spock at the start for presuming he would be okay with any of this.
Yeah. It's, I think, as you say, some wonderful performances. I think it's that dinner sequence that is most famous because obviously it references the name of the film, The Undiscovered Country. It's where you have the wonderful joke about experiencing Shakespeare in its original Klingon.
Great performance from the Klingons as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, again, we mentioned last week the Chancellor actually is a recast actor from Final Frontier, just in heavy makeup, so you don't necessarily immediately recognize him, but it is there. And Christopher Plummer playing essentially the main Klingon in the film, and the main villain, as it turns out, the one who's obsessed with Shakespeare. Excellent casting.
Respects Kirk.
And respects Kirk.
His undoing is that he assumes. I think his undoing is that he assumes Kirk is like him.
Exactly like him. I think that's the thing, that like that they see each other as parallels, but they don't. But he doesn't necessarily realize that they're not. That they're going in ever so slightly different directions.
Yeah, Kirk. The fact pivots around that Kirk is wrong about himself. Spock is right. That Kirk is capable of.
Yeah, I think Plummer's character has the same perspective as Kirk, but they are both wrong about Kirk. Whereas, as you say, Spock is right about Kirk, and that's where the lines are different. I think
the conclusion about Kirk is a good man.
Yes,
but even
despite all of his flaws,
even in the thick of it, when there is the chance for combat, Kirk's instinct is not to fight. He calls for surrender.
But I think it's the old men have wisdom thing, as opposed to it being like eventually an old soldier will learn.
Kirk's instinct is to fight, but in the moment he chooses to fight for peace as opposed to
fighting
start
for vengeance.
A new war.
Yeah. But yeah, it's in that scene that I think you get some of the best parts of this film, and it's also the beginning of what I think is the worst part of the film. Because they obviously were having so much fun having Christopher Plummer there delivering Shakespearean quotes that the script is riddled with it, and sometimes it feels forced. And throughout, I didn't mind it years ago, but for some reason watching it this time, and I think it was the expectations of like I remember when this came out, and then by the time I was old enough to like properly, because I was only 9, I think, when this came out. But by the time I was properly old enough to fully enjoy it and understand it and sit down with my uncle in particular, who's a massive nerd, and does watch this show from time to time. Thank you, Adrian. That this was a legitimate contender for being the best Star Trek film.
Yeah.
And going into this rewatch of it, I had a feeling that I might prefer this to Wrath of Khan. Obviously, we've already given Wrath of Khan a 5 each. We've already said that it is definitely the best. And I think whereas Wrath of Khan, I've never quite felt that it was that 5 until this viewing. So there was a nice surprise that it went from maybe a 4.5 to a 5. It finally clicked. It finally became that thing that everyone had said it was for me. I think it's been the other way around with this one.
Yeah.
That there was a memory that wasn't quite served in
For
this
me,
watch.
what I found interesting is I think the last time I probably watched all these films kind of together was late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
And watching them now, having recently turned 30,
Mm.
the plot line, that through line of aging and stuff works so much better for me than it ever did when I was younger. There's a lot in these films I appreciate a lot more nuance. I picked out and kind of appreciated more than I did the last time I watched any of these films.
Completely agree. I think because I'm like closer to 40 now than hell. I'm closer to 50 than I am 20. And so for me,
which is arguably the position we find Kirk in motion picture.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been in his 40s, in like early 40s, but he definitely would have been in his 40s at that point. At least for Prime Universe Kirk. Kelvin Universe Kirk is a little younger on the whole. He actually has a different date of birth, so oddly enough. I think on the whole, actually, as a series, I've got more out of these 6 films than I thought I was going to.
Definitely. I thought I knew what to expect going in.
Yeah.
And I found them better than I expected them to be.
All of them, even Final Frontier. I think Final Frontier, I think as a whole, it's probably where it landed. I think I expected it to be a 2-ish out of 5, and it gave, as a whole, it gave me a 2-ish out of 5. But there's a lot more quality within that film than I remember.
I knew I liked these films. I knew I'd enjoy these films. I think it, and again, I'm not even necessarily talking Star Trek as a whole. Star Trek as a whole obviously has a stake for the best sci-fi franchise of all time.
I think it is.
But Star Trek, the motion pic, Star Trek 1 through 6, I think has a stake as one of the great film franchises. I'm not kind of saying Star Trek as a film franchise, specifically
just those 6 films.
Star Trek 1 through 6 as the
TOS films,
whole.
Mm.
Because they are undoubtedly sequels to each other. With motion picture as a slight odd one out, but
even then, there are things in that, like the little bit of extra knowledge about the Vulcan homeworld, and like seeing the progression of Spock and this, that, and the other. it isn't necessarily a film for everyone. Like, it doesn't even necessarily fit with the rest of these films thematically in a way.
Yeah.
However, there is, because I've been reading up on the timelines again. There is a full 5-year mission between Motion Picture and Wrath of Khan. They get sent out again after that, so the Enterprise gets another full 5-year mission. It isn't a real time gap.
Captain's it.
Kirk as admiral. They send him out as an admiral.
So why is he so restless in Wrath of Khan?
I think it's because it's something like 2 years into that mission, it becomes a training vessel. So he's essentially an extension of Starfleet Academy. And so I think he's annoyed because he's essentially like had to look after children.
Yeah.
Which for
why they're training at the start of Wrath of Khan.
At the start of Wrath of Khan, yeah. So it's I think as a whole, you're right. It's not. It's certainly a contender for the top film franchise as a coherent group as well. Because I mean, obviously, like say the Bond franchise aren't coherent groups because you've got little pockets and then reboots and this, that, and the other.
This was doing what the Fast and Furious franchise does before the Fast and Furious franchise was a twinkle in anyone's eyes.
Well, I mean, you say that the first Fast and the Furious franchise, first Fast and the Furious film, only came out, I think, 8 or 9 years after this one. Like, that's how old Fast and the Furious is. I think it was like 2000 that the first one came out. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know. And of course, Fast and the Furious, complete tangent here, essentially a straight remake of a film that came out at roughly this time, Point Break.
Yeah.
So I mean, we talk in one of our other series, like this nearly ended up as one of our Before the MCU episodes. And obviously it's mutated into something else. This series has sort of shown, and especially with TNG existing at the same time, and with around the time of this final film getting Spock and Scotty in TNG, you've got a coherence there with Star Trek that Marvel and Disney are now trying to do. They've sort of done it.
Marvel and Disney have done it.
Well, no, because I mean, at this point, because the TV side of Marvel and the film side of Marvel had a bit of a falling out.
I thought you meant just a shared universe in general, I suppose.
No. I mean, shared universe in general, obviously, yes. The Marvel Cinematic Universe nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. I think as far as the mixing the mediums of film and television go, we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. Yeah. Obviously, the pandemic has sort of forced Disney's hand a little bit, but we'll see what happens in the next couple of years with Disney Plus. Obviously, what they're doing with Star Wars as well.
That said, we've been kind of concluding for a little while now. I want to step back because I did want to discuss the secondary plot to Kirk and Bones in prison.
Yeah.
Sherlock Spock.
Yes. Yeah.
A murder mystery.
Yeah.
To the point that it ends in a parlor scene.
Yep.
On the bridge, it ends with a whole they did it moment.
But then with this, obviously with the overt Shakespearean references, there are definitely nods to literature in this. So, and in this, Spock actually refers to the fact that he is a direct descendant of Sherlock Holmes. It's implying, obviously, that in the universe that they exist in, Sherlock Holmes is a real person. and that he's a
However, we also
descendant
know
of.
he wasn't.
Yeah, because obviously,
He's certainly fictional.
yeah. Unless, of course, it's implying that he's a direct descendant of Arthur Conan Doyle.
No, I think it's Spock making a joke,
Could
which he
be,
does do from time to time.
because he is human after all,
Yes.
partly. So,
And this is more than I think
hmm.
any of these films, the one where you get the most human Spock.
Well, it's the one where he refers to being more than just logic.
Yeah.
That Vulcans can grow beyond logic to learn a wisdom.
And you have,
and that is backed up in the unification episodes. Like the exact same line
you also have
is used.
Kim Cattrall's Vulcan here, who is not logic.
She is logic.
At least she's not cold logic.
She's using, well, no, if anything, it is a cold logic. She's using a logic of these things are animals. We can't have peace with them.
That's with villain reveal of her. But before that is revealed, at least the part she's playing, as in the part the character's playing, is a very rules breaking Vulcan.
But then saying that, if Spock is one of the lead instructors at Starfleet Academy, and she's come through Starfleet Academy, she's obviously one of his proteges, she will have picked up his bad habits.
Yeah.
So she might not be emotional, but she might also have, in the same way that Data in TNG has a sense of humor, because he has learned an algorithm almost. Is it like he, in the way that he explains why he misses people, because his neural pathways become familiar with them, and then the absence of them he essentially misses them. I think that
I really don't have much to say about the prison stuff, other than we get to see Worf's grandfather.
Yeah, I think it serves a purpose.
It does.
But
it's a bit. I thought the film was mostly that, and I'd completely forgotten all the Enterprise murder mystery stuff existed. Then rewatching it, I really enjoyed the comedy of that.
Yeah.
And the stuff on the prison was just like, yeah.
I think it was a way of getting some action into it. A way of having a certain element of, not comic relief, because obviously, like, the murder mystery sort of has that comic relief as well.
Yeah.
But of having a lighter element to what is essentially quite a heavy film.
Yes.
And obviously, it is the final farewell to this crew. So having a more action oriented and having a love interest for Kirk, it also plays into the joke of Kirk being a bit of a
Bones brings it up.
Yeah. So it's self-referential, but not to the, I suppose, the extent that maybe, say, the last Star Wars film was. It isn't. It's nostalgia, but without it being nostalgia for nostalgia's sake.
It's also nice to watch the crew run in and save the day together to stop the assassins at the peace conference.
Yeah.
And you get a wonderful final moment where Starfleet calls them back for decommission. And Spock says, if I was human, I'd tell them to go to hell. If I was human, of course.
Yeah. And then, of course, you get one more final reference to literature with second star on the right and straight
onto morning.
Yeah.
Which is a nice final shot, basically, of the,
because obviously it's Peter Pan, the boy who never grew old, and it's a crew that refused to get old. They refused to grow up in a way, and so it is wonderful. And I think that to be honest, actually discussing it now, the niggles that I had with it when I watched it are slowly going away.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's as good as I once remembered it being. But it's again, you've got that challenge of, I suppose, trying to get the magic of Wrath of Khan again, of getting the writer director back to do it, of like trying, like, because this is most certainly a can we do that again?
What are you giving
So
it?
I know you hate decimals. I can't give it a 5.
I'm
I
not
think
giving
it's
it a
a
5.
no. I can't give it a 5. It's but it's certainly not a 4.
I'm giving it a
Um,
4 just for reference. It's getting 4
mm,
stars from me.
I'm going to go 4.5.
4.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4.5.
Just
Like,
have the courage of your convictions, man. Give it a 4.
no, it's worth more than a 4.
Decimals are for cowards.
Decimals are not for cowards. Decimals are for those who care. So,
So,
which,
brings us to
well,
Disco
I
Corner.
think it actually brings us to our final rankings.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Because although we are going to do some more episodes to finish off Disco, we're going to have some shorter Disco Corner episodes to see us to the end of season 3. This is the end of at least our discussion of this set of films. So in reverse order, I think obviously Star Trek V Final Frontier came last. I think we both you gave it a 2 and I was a 2.5. So aggregate score of 4.5.
For me, next will be Search for Spock.
And I'd agree. Yeah. I think we gave them. I think you gave it a 4, and I was like a high 3 or something like that. So
Yeah, my 4 might be generous.
But as you don't like decimals, and we're trying to avoid a 3 for our patented cold light of day scale,
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine. A
Next
4.
up will be the motion picture for me.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think as far as a quality film goes, I think it's as good as it. At least 2 of the films
Then
that are above it.
equal second,
Mm-hmm.
A Voyage Home and Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, because obviously we scored Voyage Home with 2 different scores. We went for
Yes, we did.
quality, and we went for how we actually feel about it as an emotional experience, which I think again aggregated out that it was a little higher. So I think potentially Undiscovered Country comes in at number 3. Voyage Home comes in at number 2.
Wrath of Khan.
And then Wrath of
The top
Khan,
spot.
where it does rightfully belongs. I think what was amazing with all of these was actually how good, on the whole, all of them were.
Yeah.
Like even with Final Frontier, I think that there's such a high bar set, and yeah, brilliant. And yes, now we've got our flashing lights going. Disco Corner.
Time, yeah. Disco Corner.
Disco Floor, Disco
Deck.
what?
Disco Deck.
Disco Deck, yeah. Why did?
Yeah, man.
Next,
We keep coming up with
next
better
time.
names of this every week.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. When it has its standalone, we'll go Disco Deck.
So this week was Terra Firma Part 2.
Yep.
And we say this week, by the time you're watching it, it was last week and there'll be a new episode out. But this week for us,
because we're recording this on Sunday the 20th of December 2020.
Pardon me.
But yeah, this goes out on Christmas Day.
The follow-up to Terra Firma Part 1 from last week.
Yeah. Oddly enough.
I usually watch Disco Friday every week. And I wasn't looking forward to this, so I ended up putting it off until Saturday. And boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, excellent episode again. I mean, a different episode.
I wasn't looking forward to spending another episode in the Mirror Universe.
Yeah.
However, for performances, particularly from is it
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, Michelle Yeoh.
Yeoh. Yeah.
Was phenomenal.
Because she's a really, really subtle actress as well.
Yeah,
like especially with this character.
She's wanting, and here's where it's revealed firmly what her plan was. She wants to make the Mirror Universe more like
the Prime Universe.
Yeah. There might have been a weird beep then. Sorry, guys.
No, I didn't hear it. So it should be okay. I can put one in, though.
She wants to make evil Mirror Michael more like Michael. And it's an interesting fact because in the Prime Universe, she's a cold, calculating character who's hard, but you take what she's become there and put her back in the Mirror Universe, the Terran Universe, whatever you want to call it, and all of a sudden she's very warm and soft-hearted because
it's all relatively speaking, though, isn't it?
Yeah, what her time in the Prime Universe has done to her has arguably made her incompatible with what the Terran Universe is. It's when Mirror Saru instantly realizes, says, "You're not Terran."
Yeah.
It's one. I think it's moment.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think it's sort of in a way, as we've just talked about with Spock, where he says that you can go beyond logic, and gain a wisdom. And I think that the Terrans are very much about anger and fear.
And go beyond cruelty, and
you can go beyond it. You can still be respected. You can still be revered and feared, and you could still be a strong, powerful leader. Because I don't think she had any immediate aspirations of obviously immediate change. She knew this was going to be hundreds of years for it to become something else. But what she wanted was a strong, confident, wise leader that, yes, may still do horrible things, but with a goal of eventually it being more beneficial for everyone.
You were right partly right in last week. You mentioned that you thought she would let Saru go through the
Vahari.
Vahari. And she did. And she tells him,
tell the others.
Yeah, and then what we can do, you honor those you've lost.
Through vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's still very much Terran Philippa Jojo. But one who's learned a new path, a new way. But one that she ultimately fails to convince many of the others of.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the point. That wasn't the test.
No.
Because it is revealed that this is a test for her. That has been put in front of her by
the Guardian of Forever, which is a character of sorts. It was a sentient gateway. I had a feeling it was this character, to be honest.
I saw some people also speculating out there that that's what it was.
Yeah, because obviously it's a door, and in the original series, and when he reveals himself later in this episode, he goes back to it being a large stone archway. in the original series with Kirk, the Guardian of Forever is a sentient door of sorts to anywhere in space and time, and Kirk has to go through it. I believe it's the episode with Joan Collins in it, or episodes with Joan Collins.
The episode where they go back to
Bones goes through and he goes nuts because he goes nuts, and they've got to find Bones because he's got an infection. Yeah, well, he's got an infection or something that's driving him crazy, but he's also altered history. So Kirk has to go back and make sure history happens the way it's supposed to happen, which I believe
by Harlan Ellison, isn't it?
Yeah, but I believe it's the one where it's as I say, Joan Collins, and I think Kirk realizes that Joan Collins has to die.
Yeah.
For the right things to happen, and of course, it's a wonderful, wonderful two-parter. But it's something that outside of the cartoon series, you never see the Guardian of Forever again. By the time of the cartoon series, which is at the end of Kirk's first 5-year mission, the Guardian of Forever.
It's year 4.
Year
5 has never been seen on screen.
Yeah, they have the Federation work with the Guardian of Forever and have regular visits through time to go and observe things, basically like historians. But as the Guardian
in this episode is that during the Temporal Wars, the Guardian had himself as to not be used as a weapon.
Yeah.
And only the combination of the ship's computer evolving with the sphere data could have figured out where
he's been hiding.
And that he could help Philippa.
Because it was one of those things that, again, rewatching TNG, I have questioned, well, where's the Guardian of Forever? Now, and obviously, in theory, for a being such as that its entire existence is being aware of time, the temporal wars may have started earlier than we think.
Yeah.
As far as we would understand time. So, of course, in TNG, you could potentially completely write off the existence of the Guardian of Forever because he may have already buggered off at that point.
And bring this back on from the lore dump onto the plot. Yeah, so the whole point of sending her back was a test, not to see if she could change things, not to see if she could make a difference there, but to see if she would try.
Yeah, to see if she wanted to.
Yeah. But given a chance to run through the same scenario, has she evolved enough as a person to try for a better way?
Yeah.
Which she succeeded at. Well, no, she succeeded at trying.
She succeeded at trying, and that's and obviously that's the message in this one, that like sometimes trying is good enough. Don't be scared to try and fail.
Like her future's uncertain, but to an entity as powerful as the Guardian, her future is worth betting on, effectively.
And of course, he then chooses a time that she's going to be safe in, where she's not going to phase out of. But he doesn't state, however, that it's sending her back to what would essentially be her own time. So Disco Season 1 and Season 2.
He sends her back into her spin-off.
Yep, because she's going to lead.
She is leading the Section 31 spin-off.
Yeah. Which there are rumours she might turn up in Season 2 of Picard.
Yeah, which the Mirror Universe would be closer to.
Because it's not a huge amount. It's only about 100 years between Disco Season 1 and,
I mean, I'm not
and
gonna lie.
Picard.
If I get to see Michelle Yeoh as a morally bankrupt person, because she's still, not the greatest of people.
But she'd fit in really well in that ragtag bunch.
Yeah,
It's in that.
If I get to see her view arguing against Picard's ideals, those two actors going at it, man.
Because of course, if she when that character finds out about the Borg as well, like that's so. I wonder if the Borg are Terran.
No, I don't think so. The Borg are from the Prime Universe. But you get a rather nice farewell scene between Michael and Giorgio, Philippa, however I interchange between the two.
It's all the same.
And where her they accept each other as family. And their parting words is she warns Michael that this time she's in is a lot more Terran than the time she's from, in kind of viewpoints and.
But then I think, again, I mean, Star Trek referencing real world events, we probably are in the most Terran time since at least that the whole world would experience since World War II.
Yeah,
we are in a more cynical, more selfish time now. So I suppose it's only right that Discovery finds itself in a more cynical and selfish time.
On a side plot, Book helps them pinpoint the location of a ship using some Emerald Hand tech.
Yep.
Not much else happens there really, other than some disapproving words from the Admiral, who I still don't
rightfully
trust.
So. I still don't fully trust him, but I think it's nicely set up that they could decide to make him into a villain, or they could decide to just make it that he is a bit of a coward.
I don't trust the Federation in as much as I don't think the Federation of this far future is worthy of trust in the same way that we've grown to trust the Federation of.
They might
the old.
They might be more of the Federation that Picard is dealing with, as opposed to the Federation that we all know and love.
And then, Michael delivers her report to Saru, and Saru asks what happened to Philippa. Has she gone? And Michael doesn't say she's dead, but kind of implies she's left. And Saru says, "Well, she's to us at least.
She's gone.
She's deceased." So they hold a wake for her
of sorts. Yeah.
And it's a rather touching final moment to the episode.
It is. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the next 3 episodes, because it does feel like this is the first of the 3 seasons that might not necessarily have an end. Yeah. Like season 1 had an end. It told the story it needed to tell. Yes, it led directly into season 2, but season 1 had an end. Season 2 had an end.
Season 2 ended on a cliffhanger, though.
It did end on a cliffhanger, but like
there's enough time.
But the story within it,
there's enough time to end this on a cliffhanger of finding out what caused the burn.
Yeah.
And having that be a revelatory kind of.
I think that's the thing, though. I mean, I think with this one, the cliffhanger almost has so much riding on it, whereas the end of season 1, the end of season 2, there was this lovely tease almost of what
Yeah.
was to come. Whereas this has,
I mean, the obvious reveal is going to be the Federation caused it, right?
yes, although I don't think it is. I don't think it will be that. I think if anything, I'll be disappointed if it's that. Unless of course it's a red herring.
I mean, given the two obvious choices,
Mm,
the Federation or the grand AI villain of the current Star Trek universe,
mm,
I think I'd prefer the Federation.
yeah,
And maybe
maybe.
that reveal that they're the product of their own downfall allows them to heal and begin again.
Mm. Although, yeah, I know you don't agree with me. I'd still quite like it to be those weird little parasite things from season 1 of TNG. I know it won't be.
Yeah,
I
it's not
don't
going to
think.
be that.
I mean, I didn't think it was going to be, but then we've just had an episode with the Guardian of Forever.
Okay, fair
So
point.
who's to know? Like,
Yeah.
it could be Q. I mean, again, who's to say that like our Q? It might not be the Q,
Maybe it's
but
Gary Seven.
it won't be Gary Seven, obviously.
Is he
Maybe.
not still alive?
Mm.
He just
Hmm?
abandoned the planet, wasn't he?
Yeah, for a TV series that never happened. But he was
Oh,
a
am I
time
mixing
agent.
up? No, I'm not Gary Seven.
Gary Seven was the time agent.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of Gary Seven. I was thinking of.
Gary Seven had a cat though, and Buck's cat has always had a slight weird hint at something,
You think Gary Seven's cat is Buck's cat?
or a species of something that
But no,
is more than.
I wasn't thinking Gary Seven.
Hmm.
Sorry, I was thinking the crewman from Where No Man Has Gone Before, who becomes a god. The one they pretended Benedict Cumberbatch was in Into Darkness before they revealed he was Khan.
Can't remember that episode. Because Where No Man Has Gone Before was the second pilot where
Yeah,
they leave the galaxy. They go through the barrier's edge.
yeah, and then one of the crew members becomes.
Because it's some with some aliens that are from beyond in a different galaxy who have been kind of scoping out our galaxy for a potential invasion.
But one of the crew members who's like Kirk's best mate becomes a god, doesn't he?
I think so, yeah, because there's quite in the original series there's quite a lot of those where people suddenly become gods,
Yeah.
or go beyond XYZ. So, yeah.
Going back actually slightly to
Mm,
Undiscovered Country, I
mm,
did like how it ended on where no man or no one has gone
mm,
before, bringing it in line with the change in phrase in the next generation to where no one has gone before.
yeah, yeah. But then at the same time, it was not necessarily about the Federation or about humanity. It was about a unified galaxy. Really, that
Yeah.
statement, wasn't it? It was about peace as opposed to conquest.
Gary Mitchell
So,
was who I was thinking of.
very well. Could be anyone. Like a Q would be like
Q would be odd. I don't think we're gonna do the Q
not
after we've
not
just done the
not
Guardian of
not the Q, not as in
not horny for
the
Picard Q.
not horny for Picard Q, but potentially a different Q that thought they've got too far. And
I saw a something was going around the other day, like images where it's like it was talking about how Q is this god basically who just decides one day, look at that balding middle-aged starship captain. I'm gonna become obsessed with him. And just spends
yeah,
all his time wanting to play with a balding middle-aged starship captain.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I suppose it's a way. It was a way of emphasizing the importance of that particular captain and that particular enterprise. Because again, I mean, they had some very big shoes to fill.
But one of my favorite moments is in when Q goes to Bava DS9.
Yeah.
Cisco just straight up punches him out.
Mm.
And Q goes, Picard never punched me. And Cisco's just like, I'm not Picard.
Yeah.
Love that. I love Q. John Delancey is brilliant.
He is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I think that's all we've got to say on Disco Corner this week. Like it was an absolutely brilliant episode, and yet probably not a lot to say.
No,
other than speculation of what's to come.
I think I spent this time just kind of discussing what happened more than we have in previous.
Yeah.
But a nice fitting close to the chapter of Philippa Giorgio in Disco.
Definitely. And I can't get over how good Disco is. I know it isn't for everyone. I know there's some folk who really don't like Disco as a Star Trek anyway. They still insist that it isn't Star Trek. And I think the discussion that we had at the beginning of the series, where you discussed why you had reservations about Disco at some point.
Yeah.
That for me, it's as good as Star Trek can get. It is hitting everything that Star Trek needs to hit. And I've watched a lot of Star Trek this year. It's different.
At Once Upon a Time, we would have said the same about other Star Trek shows.
Certainly.
As good as Star Trek can get, no one knows.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's any better than what's come before.
It's the Star Trek that fits into the modern sensibilities.
Yes, exactly. And so when I say it's as good as Star Trek can get, I mean that in perfect respect to everything that's come before. Everything that came before was as good as Star Trek can get for the time that it was made and for what the audience sensibilities were.
We're fast approaching year-round Star Trek. So hopefully, if Disco isn't your thing, one of those shows will be.
Yeah. There's plenty to go on. And of course, all the old stuff, which, at least internationally, all of the TV series is on Netflix. So
Picard, which is on Amazon.
Picard, which is Amazon.
Although there's Star Trek, not old Star Trek. So
although there's a weird thing that's happening in the States, I think CBS has allowed Netflix to get a hold of Picard and Disco for old seasons once CBS has done the fresh season. Okay. So for some reason in the States, Picard looks like it might be a Netflix show, but everywhere else, it's going to be an Amazon show.
International streaming rights.
Oh yeah.
I could do a whole episode on international streaming rights if anyone wants to watch two people discuss that.
Yeah, maybe we have a chat on how HBO Max is the worst of all streaming services.
It's not.
It's not, but I can see where Nolan was coming from. And on that note, let's leave it for now.
Just one counterpoint.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who finds myself overly agreeing with Nolan. I wouldn't even call myself a huge Nolan fan. But yeah, my issues with the streaming on that are probably different to Nolan's issues with it.
I don't know. I think remember, he is a Brit. He will remember the fact that HBO Max is not available anywhere else except for the States. So he'll understand perfectly the fact that...
Surely that's a good thing for him, because at least there's countries where his films are in cinemas.
Yeah, in empty cinemas that have been closed down due to a global pandemic.
Which didn't bother him in the summer.
Yeah, because it briefly reopened. But I mean, if they're not open
Cinemas are
next
open in
year,
this country right now.
in like a handful of places, they're not open everywhere.
They're open anywhere they legally can open.
Yeah, but again, I mean, that's the thing. It's where they legally can be open. So at the moment,
There isn't
like
that many tier
anyway,
4 areas. Yeah,
yeah,
we're
but
way
it's
off
not.
on it. Yeah.
They're not open in tier 3. I haven't got
Oh
a
no.
cinema here.
Okay.
No,
Yeah. Fair point.
I
Tier 2
I
and
I
tier
would
1.
I would murder to go to the cinema right now. Quite literally murder. Like
I've been weighing up going
yeah.
to Wonder Woman, but I still just don't feel it's safe enough to go. So I'm probably it's why
I'm not even looking forward to Wonder Woman, but I would go and see it because
if
I desperately want to go to the
I know
cinema.
we're not going to get on a streaming service like we have in America,
Mm,
but if like it's launching on HBO Max on Christmas Day, the day you could be watching this episode,
yeah, I know what I'd rather watch.
I would like it to be available to rent in the UK on Christmas Day.
And on a
At least.
platform, on an open platform, because the other problem is for us, and we're going on a massive tangent, but to get access to HBO stuff in the UK, you've got to go through Sky. So
No,
to be able to rent,
you,
to be able to rent it, the potential is that you'd probably have to go through Sky to then rent it on one of the Sky film services, or one of the pay-per-view services. So it might even be that you need a Now TV subscription or a Sky
no,
subscription
you can't
to
rent
then
via Now TV. You can only rent through Sky.
exactly. So you need to be paying a monthly subscription to then have the benefit of being able to rent something. So like any
To be
HBO
fair,
product would be
earlier
behind
in the
two
year,
paywalls.
when we
So
did The Witches,
mm,
that did go up to rent on everything, like
yeah.
iTunes, Amazon, etc.
Mm.
But
So
yeah,
really, like, yeah. Anyway,
this has
enough of
nothing
that.
to do with Star Trek.
It's nothing to do with Star Trek, thankfully. Star Trek is wonderful. It's in a wonderful place. I know we're not supposed to say the C word, otherwise YouTube downgrades us, but COVID has had its benefits, and being able to go through Star Trek has been one of them. I
I'm not
have a
sure
great.
I would use the sentence COVID has had its benefits, but
I mean, it hasn't. I was out of work for 6 months. Star Trek has sort of kind of helped to keep me sane and helped to keep
Star
my
Trek has
wife
kept yeah.
sane.
That's it. Star Trek has
Like,
kept you sane in a
yeah,
world where
yeah. And but at the same time, I wouldn't have had this opportunity without the horrors that are going on at the moment. I have to count myself lucky. We don't have a Thanksgiving in this country, but we do obviously kind of treat Christmas like that. And I've been very lucky this year to get through it. Been very lucky to have this show and this channel with you, James.
yeah,
It's
it has
been
been a
wonderful.
good time.
Yeah.
So one last time for a while in the Star Trek, live long and nope, I
Live
can't
long and
do it
prosper.
today. Yeah, live long and
Yeah,
prosper.
there we go.
Merry Christmas.
Indeed.
Stay
Thank you
safe.
for joining us. Like and subscribe.
All right. We will see you in the new year.
Yes. And maybe we'll be in a galaxy far, far away.
See you then.